As discussed in my last video, Angry Birds defied the odds by becoming one of the most popular mobile games in history, thanks to being featured as App of the Week in February 2010. While it would be rather silly to attribute the franchise's success to this 1 week at the top of the App Store, as that would discredit the determination and perseverance of Rovio's staff, it undoubtedly was the turning point. Prior to its spotlight, Angry Birds had amassed 40,000 downloads, which was nothing to scoff at, especially by Rovio's standards. However, by the end of 2010, Angry Birds had accumulated over 42 million downloads, which is a number we're far more familiar with when discussing the magnitude of the franchise. Obviously, Rovio didn't go into their pivotal week unprepared, hoping that their game as it was would garner the attention of millions of users. Rovio released a cinematic trailer on their YouTube channel made by one of their partners, Combo Animation, a week in advance to further promote their product, which clearly worked. Then, for the week of, Angry Birds would receive its first major game expansion in the form of the Mighty Hoax episode. Much like the events of Poached Eggs, Mighty Hoax takes place in the vast plains, but is arguably more challenging, as it features far more complex structures for returning avid fans. In the cutscenes, the pigs try again by stealing the birds' eggs, replacing them with cardboard cutouts, and using a King Pig and Bush cardboard decoy to get away. Unlike its preceding episode, Mighty Hoax only had 42 levels, but still served its purpose, giving new and old players plenty of content to enjoy. Angry Birds was now up to 105 levels, which was deemed plenty at the time, but Rovio knew they wouldn't last forever. Logically, adding more levels to keep players busy would be the easy solution, but Rovio wanted to mix things up a bit. Not too much as to deviate from their successful formula, but just enough to keep things new and interesting. They were keenly aware that Angry Birds needed a change of scenery, as the environments from the first two stages, while visually appealing, were starting to become repetitive. In the same vein, most players are familiar with the same 5 birds: Red, the Blues, Chuck, Bomb, and Matilda, but adding some new characters would be the perfect way to keep things fresh. But what theme would be most appropriate to incorporate all these ideas? On April 23, 2010, Angry Birds would receive its second major update called Danger Above, which added 45 levels to the game through 3 new themes. In the episode, the pigs steal the eggs using a raft with balloons from above and make their escape, moving away from the vast plains to jungles, cities, and the sky. Danger Above would also debut the 6th member of the flock, Hal, who was introduced as a captive by the pigs in level 6-4. Once you beat the level, the game will notify the player about Hal's unlock, and he is then playable in the next level, 6-5. Hal's ability in the game is arching into the opposite direction when activated. In order to do this, he opens his beak to resemble a boomerang and is much floatier than other birds, enabling him to fly farther. This also makes him the only bird who rotates when airborne in the game. Angry Birds would receive another significant update on July 16, 2010, called The Big Setup, which added another 45 levels across 3 themes. However, this update is more memorable for the addition of the 7th member of the flock, the Big Brother bird, or as we now know him, Terence. In the Big Setup, the pigs kidnap the birds and steal the eggs, which obviously upsets Terence. He decides to take action and takes on the pigs all by himself. During his journey, Terence frees Hal from captivity and then the rest of the flock, caging King Pig in the process. However, in an unforeseen turn of events, the almighty construction hat pig snaps his non-existent fingers and the entire flock disappears and the pig... Wait, that didn't happen? Anyways, the 3 themes take the player through previously seen levels from the first 3 episodes, which the pigs are remaking, as the pigs wear construction hats, and the levels themselves contain construction sites in the background. Now that we've covered the obligatory information, we have finally entered the Commonwealth Plush era. As we know, the initial wave of plushies officially debuted in both online shops and in-person retailers in March 2011, and consisted of 9 different characters. However, despite being released after the Danger Above and the Big Setup updates, Hal and Terence were omitted from the lineup, leading many to believe there would be a follow-up of some sort. Those people were correct in their assumptions, as 2 all-new plushies appeared on ToyWiz in August of 2011 and shopped at Angry Birds in September of 2011. And to nobody's surprise, these 2 characters were Hal and Terence. With each one being around $15.99 for the 5-inch depending on where you got it, they were slightly more expensive than the first wave, which were priced around $12.99 each. If you wanted a larger size, they also came in 8-inch, 12-inch, and 16-inch as usual. Well, according to the listing on Shop at Angry Birds, technically Terence was offered as a 5.5-inch and an 8.5-inch, which is quite strange yet logical. They were also offered as backpack clips for those who were into that. Furthermore, Hal and Terence had some distinctive features, making them far more interesting than the first wave plushies. For instance, Terence featured his darker feather spots, which was a characteristic that the red plush lacked. His underbelly feathers were also well detailed, melding into his red feathers to match his in-game appearance. And if you look at his forehead, you can see they even included his wrinkles, which is another fantastic detail. However, far more compelling was Hal's beak, which allowed you to recreate his boomerang ability. The tan feathers surrounding his beak were also a nice touch, again matching his in-game appearance. Unfortunately, this specialized beak would only be available for the 5-inch variation, as the larger size variations featured a closed beak, which was certainly an odd quirk. Even stranger was the fact that Commonwealth made a 5-inch Hal with a sealed beak, and nobody is privy as to why this variation exists. It could be a factory error, a later modified release, or an obscure specification. It is my belief that this was a later release because Commonwealth never sold an open beak Hal for the red era, but did so with a closed beak variation. But once again, this is simply speculation. Since they were released for the cyan blue era, their side tags mimicked the Angry Birds app icon from the time, and their tush tags were white with a black Angry Birds logo. Retailers received box sets containing just Hal and Terence, so there was nothing specialized regarding the display. The 8-inch retail variations didn't have specialized boxes either. Commonwealth also added Hal and Terence to the classic assortment of good stuff plushies, meaning they could be found in claw machines as well. On October 21st, 2011, Angry Birds Seasons received its second Halloween-themed episode and 8th overall called Hamoween. This update added another 45 levels featuring pumpkin patches, exploding jack-o'-lanterns, creepy skeletons, and eerie skies. However, in order to complete the episode, players would get unexpected help from an all-new bird who we know to be Bubbles. Bubbles' ability is to inflate to a large size and then deflate like a balloon, flying about until he disintegrates. The actual inflating ability is quite strong and can be extremely destructive when utilized properly. His first appearance is in level 1-4 in his so-called tutorial level. Bubbles, unlike most of the Flock's members, made his debut in Seasons, though he would later be added to Classic in the Birthday Party update on December 11th, 2011. Reminiscent of the Hal and Terence plushies, Bubbles would not receive his plush counterpart for several months, during which anticipation grew for its inevitable launch on ToyWiz.com. In April of 2012, the Bubbles plush debuted on ToyWiz and shopped at Angry Birds, but two different models were offered, one representing his conventional state and one representing his inflated state. The conventional Bubbles was about $13.99 for the 5-inch variation, and was also offered as a 3-inch backpack clip and as an 8-inch. The inflated Bubbles started at $16.99 for the 8-inch variation, and was also offered as a 12-inch and as a 16-inch. When taking Bubbles' size into consideration, these offerings did make canonical sense with respect to the other Angry Birds characters, though it would have been ideal to see both offered in all sizes. Like the Hal and Terence plushies, the Bubbles plush includes a couple of minor details that accurately depict his in-game design. His beak is slightly convex and rather pointed towards the tip, and one of his head feathers is short while the other is tall. Bubbles' release coincided with the beginning of the Red Era, and he was simply added to the Hal and Terence assortment. Retailers now receive Red Era box sets containing Hal, Terence, and Bubbles, and he would also appear in the Red Era Good Stuff assortments. Though there's something special about the claw machine Bubbles, specifically the inflated variation. For the UK, Middle East, and across Europe, the Amusement and Redemption plushies were distributed by a company called White House Leisure instead of Good Stuff Toys, since they specialized in those regions. Aside from the tush tags, there's essentially no difference between them, but for one exception. For whatever reason, these White House Leisure assortments came with a 5-inch inflated Bubbles, which was never actually offered in retailers or online shops. It's borderline shocking to see, as most are familiar with the ordinary larger variations and have never heard of such an item. It's undoubtedly one of the most obscure pieces of Angry Birds merchandise, and one that I'm glad to have in my possession. Near the conclusion of my classic set documentary, I briefly discussed the various design changes that occurred for the light blue era, and for this set, there's an infamous discussion point. Hal's design was changed once again, but this time there was merit behind the decision, as his in-game design was recently facelifted. This was actually a change made during the Red Era, though most associated with the other light blue era changes. I wouldn't say it's an improvement. If anything, I think it's a downgrade, but this clearly was a notable change. On August 20th, 2012, Angry Birds Seasons received an update consisting of 20 new schoolyard-themed levels and an episode called Back to School. Levels were decked out with back-to-school gear, such as textbooks, pencils, apples, and dunce caps. However, like the Hamoween update, this episode's significance is related to the debut of a new Flock member, who we know to be Stella. Her first appearance is on level 1-5 in a tutorial level, where players quickly found out that she was challenging to say the least. Her power is the ability to blow bubbles, which can trap blocks and or pigs. Once trapped, the bubbles rise slowly with their cargo and then pop moments after, letting the blocks and pigs fall back to Earth. While this ability is great in concept, the execution leaves a lot to be desired. If you attempt to knock over heavy structures, she will only be able to lift blocks that aren't being weighed down by others. If you're in a zone with TNT or many freed open objects, then Stella may be able to do some significant damage. On her own, however, Stella will do virtually zero damage, even less than red in most circumstances. Regardless of what you think of her ability, nobody can deny she was an excellent addition to the flock. In November of 2012, not long after the Back to School update, the Stella Plush debuted on Toy Wiz and shopped at Angry Birds, and retailed for about $15.99 for the 5-inch variation. She was offered in various other sizes, including the somewhat obscure backpack clip variation. Once again, her plush captured her in-game design masterfully, from her distinctive long tail and head feathers to her signature side-eye facial expression. Stella was released around the beginning of the light blue era, though it's not overly difficult to find late red era variations. However, this isn't the only interesting Stella-related tag quirk, as it appears a few releases featured a distinctive light blue era tag. The copyright dates and touch tags are identical to the typical light blue era plush, only this one is pink and predominantly features an image of Stella. Not even I know where this variation came from. My best guess is that this was some kind of store exclusive or first edition, similar to the initial release of the classic set. It appears Stella was released as a standalone item, perhaps bundled at times with a Wave 2 or classic box set, until she was officially added to the Hogs and Kisses set for its 2013 re-release. So there you have it, a comprehensive overview of the second classic Commonwealth Angry Birds plush set. Just as the originals, the second wave Angry Bird plushies would be discontinued near the beginning of 2014, though Stella would stick around as a part of her own set. It's genuinely surprising how many oddities there were to cover here, from Hal's strange redesigns to the confusing size variations of bubbles. Because of these peculiarities though, I am very fond of this set, especially because it features many of my favorite flock members. If you have any comments, questions, or complaints, you can let me know in the comment section below. With that I say, peace out.